Welcome to the show. This is the Box Angeles podcast with me, your host, Mike Elder. I really appreciate you being here. We've got a great episode this week. My guest is writer Michael Jamin. He's written on shows like Just Shoot Me, Beavis and Butthead, King of the Hill, Tacoma FD, Marin. He's got a lengthy list of credits. I first discovered Michael on TikTok. He was posting like insightful videos about what it's like to actually be a writer in Hollywood, answering questions. He did a lot of good stuff during the writer's strike. He does residual check breakdowns. Really good TikTok channel. That's where I found him. And I reached out to do the podcast. And conveniently, he just dropped a book he wanted to promote. A Paper Orchestra is the name of the book. It's out now everywhere. It's in the library. I saw some ebooks in the library. I just looked to see if it was there beforehand. I love the library. I hope Michael does too. So anyways, I'm reading the book. It's really good. As I told him in this interview, it's not what I was expecting, but it is very good. It's very poignant. It's personal essays that really seem like they're coming from a place of just honest reflection, and I'm enjoying it. I'm about halfway through. We just recorded this podcast a couple days ago, but I'm already about halfway through. It's really good. I would highly recommend you check out his book, A Paper Orchestra, but also check out his TikTok channel, like I said, or his Instagram. He shares really good videos, really insightful tidbits, like I said, as far as helpful showbiz tips, which I love, obviously, because I do this podcast. But anyways, I digress. We talked about his book. We talked about his start in Hollywood. We talked about his experience as a writer with the casting process, which I found endlessly fascinating. So this is an awesome conversation. I'm really thrilled to have Michael on. I think you guys are going to dig it. So without further ado, I give you...
Yeah, Michael Jamin. How about that?
Hi, Michael. Thank you for coming down.
Thank you for having me.
I emailed you a long time ago because you started doing TikToks that I thought were delightful. I think, did you start right around the strike, the writer's strike?
No, I've been doing
You were doing it before.
2.5 years now.
But you blew up around the writer's strike, probably.
I kind of blew up before then, but I blew up
Maybe
a little more.
I saw you before then, yeah.
Yeah, I blew up.
Well, I emailed you during the writer's strike.
Okay.
I loved what you were doing. You were like putting visibility to what you do, your process. You were calling out all the haters and trolls, which I appreciated.
I stopped doing that, though.
You have to at some point for your mental health, I imagine. But you were also weren't you doing residual checks there for a bit? The residual check lottery or something, you called it like that?
Someone else calls it that. I just, everyone wants to know what's in my wallet.
Yes.
And so those blow up, when I do those.
I agree. So what is in your wallet?
It gets less and less every time I open those checks.
How much cash do you have?
People get upset. They want to know, why are you Americans using paper envelopes? Why? Like, what century are you living in? But it's like,
it is weird.
But I can have a direct deposit, but I can't open direct deposit on TikTok. Like, I need something to open. It's called drama.
Yeah.
And they don't get that.
You need that tactile feel.
Yeah, you're like, this is what's in the envelope.
Yeah, that gift.
This is what there would be in an envelope if I had an envelope.
I agree with that. That's fair.
Yeah.
But no, I loved your TikTok, so thank you for coming down.
Yeah,
and I saw you brought your book. You just dropped a book. What was the impetus for this? And I started reading this last night, and I had a TV audition, so I didn't read as much as I liked, but I read 2 chapters, and it was not what I was expecting, to be honest with you. I was thinking it was going to be like comedy essays, but the first one felt very personal and very... revealing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that is your wife now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that felt very personal, and I was like, oh, this is very poignant and very honest. So what was the impetus for writing it, and how did it come about?
Well, I think people... So I've been a TV writer 28 years. I think people are very surprised to learn that I don't write what I want to write. I write what I think I can sell or what someone pays me to write. I have no complaints about that. You can make a good living, but... Again, it's not really what it's often not what I want to do. It's what they want me to do. So, which is fine. I've always been a fan of David Sedaris. I love his writing. And at one point, several years ago, I thought, well, what would it be like if I wrote my version of what he does, which is, they call it personal essays, which is a title I hate. It sounds boring right off the gate. It sounds like an essay. Who wants to read an essay? But that's what they call it. And so,
except for English lit teachers, AP English lit teachers.
It's homework. It sounds like homework. I don't want my reading to sound like homework. So I started writing this collection. I told my wife at the time, I was like, I have a bad idea. I'm going to write this collection. It's going to take me years to write. And if it sells, I'll barely make anything. And she's like, you should do it. And I was like, why? And she's like, because you'll find yourself. And so I just started writing. And that's kind of what happened.
That's awesome. I love it. And there are very personal ones. Like,
Yeah.
are the rest of them all very personal as well?
Yeah.
Are there any fiction ones in there? Or are they all
No,
real?
they're all real. They're all
That's
true
awesome.
stories.
That's really cool. I love that.
How do I take a true event in my life and then fictionalize it so it feels like a story? That's the challenge.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Do you like the idea? This is something that I'm not a writer, or I don't say I'm a writer. I dabble, but like, do you like the idea of now being a published author? I feel like that's got to be something that's really cool to suddenly, like, everyone says they can write a book, but then to actually do it is a whole. My mom's been telling me for years she could write a book.
Oh, she should write.
She could, but she has never.
Right.
Right. So like, is that like a good feeling to go from scripts to suddenly actually having something tactile that you are?
It was the sense of satisfaction I got really came. It was I gave it to my agent, my book agent, and it took him forever to read it because that's what happens. And then when he finally read it, he said, "I love this." And at that moment, see, when I was in college, I wanted to be a writer, but I got rejected from the creative writing program twice. And so it was like them. It was like they were telling me, "No, you don't get to be a writer." I moved out to LA, studied screenwriting, and became a TV writer. Great, all success. But what I wanted to do was write something like this when I was 19, but I just didn't know how.
Yeah.
And so when I finally did it, and I got that, I guess, validation from my agent, it felt like, wow, I didn't let that kid down. You know?
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Wait, how did you get rejected from? They didn't just take everyone in the creative?
No, you'd think they would because you're paying full tuition. It was a lot of money. No, you had to apply to it. You had to submit, and they read your work, and mine wasn't good, and it wasn't. I understand that. I wanted to get in the program so I would learn how to write it.
What school was this?
This is Princeton. You're paying a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, when you applied to Princeton, you wanted to do a writing degree?
Well, yeah.
Or you just was like a general, and then you wanted to pivot
Yeah,
towards...
you're as an undergrad, you don't really declare your major until you're going to be a junior. So, yeah, I didn't even know. I went to Princeton because it was like the best sounding school I got into.
Sounds pretty nice.
Not like because I investigated what I could learn there.
Sure, that's fair.
As a kid.
We're short-sighted at that age.
Yeah.
I went for engineering. I've used civil engineering exactly 2 years of my life, and then I stopped using it.
That's heavy. Yeah. They had the engineering quad there at Princeton. And I was like, that's where, stay away from those buildings.
Nerds over there.
It's super hard. Not for me. Yeah. Yeah.
And so we should say it's called A Paper Orchestra.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's out now, right?
Yeah. And people want to know where to get it. So you can get signed copies on my website, michaeljamin.com, or you could find links to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or indie bookstores and all that stuff.
Yeah. I love that from your experience in college getting rejected from that creative writing stuff that you didn't give up, that you kept going
And that's
for.
one of the stories in the book.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. That one's called The House on Witherspoon Street.
Okay.
And my roommate at the time, he's like, well, why don't you get a job at, why don't you see if you can get an internship at the radio station down the street, because radio is almost like TV. And I was like, all right, and I went there, I had a meeting lined up, and then I'm walking on Witherspoon Street where the radio station was, and I walk right past the thing. I was like, what the hell? Because in my mind, I'm thinking it's going to be a tower, like something worthy where all these songs are coming out of, like glamorous. And it was in a rundown house. And I was like, what? And I go inside, and the broadcast booth was in a kid's bedroom. I was like, what is going on here?
Was it a podcast before?
It was yes, it was almost like a podcast. And then I was so disappointed in the people who worked there. They didn't want to be there. They were miserable. And then that made me not want to be there. But there was one woman who did work there, and she was a matronly woman in her mid-60s, and she was a socialite. And she had a call-in show called, Princeton's Talking.
Okay.
Which sounded like Princeton Stalking, a call-in show for serial killers. But she took a fancy to me. She liked me because I was, in her mind, a man of letters, at Princeton. And so we formed a very unlikely friendship. And the weird thing is, when she wanted to know what I was studying, I was like, yeah, I guess I'm studying writing. Oh, you're a writer, as if it's already done.
Yeah.
And then it was a tall glass of bullshit that I drank. I was like, yeah, I guess I'm a writer, even though I was not a writer. And then what happens when I started living that lie? What happens? And that's the story.
It manifests itself.
No, it all comes tumbling down, man. You can't live a lie and expect there not to be ramifications. So.
Yeah, but it inspired you enough to keep going, right?
It was the bullshit. Not really. I learned a lesson from that, from living a lie, but it didn't, I don't know if that inspired me. After college, I moved out to LA, and then I just, She didn't inspire me, but I don't know. It's in the story.
But you weren't detoured.
No, yeah.
And you kept at it.
Kept for sure. Yeah.
I think that's a dance people juggle out here. Like I still struggle with that because people ask me what I do and I'm like, I'm an actor, but am I an actor? How much acting do I actually do? You know what I mean? I audition a lot, but I can't like point to those auditions. So I always say I'm an aspiring actor, but it is an interesting thing
it's hard.
Have to deal with.
That's the time, and I relate to that. That's the time in your life. I mean, when I was not an actor, a writer, for the several years after getting into college and before I actually got work, you know, those are the hardest, in my mind, the hardest time of your life because you're not what you want to be yet, but who are you then?
Yeah.
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 I can sympathize. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have even like the small things progress you're making. It's not like you can't point to it and be like, oh, but I really did have a big audition. I didn't get it, but I did, you know.
But even when you get it, it still won't be enough. You know what I'm saying? You'd be like, well, but it was 3 lines. So, it was a guest star. You know, it's really hard to celebrate moments like that, I find.
And I think it's harder probably for writing too, because when you first got out here, I imagine you're writing stuff for yourself and you're trying to get it out there. But like people are like, yeah, but what are you actually writing for?
Well, I found, at least then, it was the loudest people were the ones who really were doing the least. And so I kind of didn't really tell people what I was doing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Did you find the people that were loud that weren't actually doing stuff to be off-putting?
Yeah, and they were, you know, a lot of people. There were a lot of more pretenders, and I got this script on. It's being evaluated. It's being considered. It's like, and which is not true. It's unless there's money changing hands, no one's considering a damn thing. It's in a pile or in the garbage. Yeah.
I love that. I feel like you see things as they really are. You just see it for what it is, and
yeah, maybe I'm jaded at this point, but yeah, I mean, I'm not. You know, I haven't. There's a lot of bullshit out here, so if you just ignore that, I guess.
Did you like that? To that point, did you like that working on a book where I guess you probably had an editor you had to report to, but like you didn't have studio notes, you didn't have a showrunner notes. Yeah. Did that feel more freeing when you were writing the book?
It felt at first very intimidating. Like, am I doing this right?
Yeah.
You know, and I liken it to because I've been running in the track. I've been a racehorse running on the track in a circle, and with a jockey on my back. Run faster, run faster, run fast. You know, that's the studio giving me notes. Do it like this, do it like this. And like eventually the horse is going to say, hey, asshole, I can run a lot faster with that 100-pound jockey hitting me on the back. And that's what it felt like in the beginning. It was like, well, am I doing it right? And then I started soaring. I feel like I was like, oh, okay, I can do it, you know? Yeah,
we were talking before that we started about I got notes recently, and you were like, at some point you just have to say, fuck these notes. You're going to do what you do because you've done it so long and you know what your voice is and you know what you're looking for. So I imagine that writing something like this book, fighting those self-doubt demons is one thing, but overall it probably felt a lot freer. You had an open-ended page that you could fill in, which a lot of people find daunting, but as a writer, I imagine you love.
Yeah, but as you said, like finding my voice, that in the beginning, so when I write TV, it's not about my voice. My job is to capture the voice of the show or the voice of the characters. And so it's not my voice. You don't want to do that because you'll ruin the show. So when I was writing this, I was like, well, what's my voice? And like, I'm old enough to like feel like, how do you not know what your voice is when you're, in the 50s? So, but eventually I found it and that became the book.
Do you remember the moment you sort of figured it out? You found it? Was it a specific thing you wrote?
No, I threw out a bunch of stories. Like the first several stories did not make the book. I just threw them out. I was like, this is not
Morning Pages style.
I just felt like I was, because I love David Sedaris. I was reading all of his work, and I felt like I was like, I wrote a bunch of stories. And I go, these are really good, and then I set them aside for a couple months, and then I read them with fresh eyes, and I was like, this is terrible. I just felt like I was imitating him. I felt like it felt like a pale imitation of like the master. I was like, what? This is terrible.
Yeah.
And then I started like Googling and watching YouTube videos of our artists and just listening to them talk about how they approach stuff. And then it made it a little easier for me.
Yeah. Do you have any routines or rituals around writing? Like even in TV or in the book, were you making it like an 8 to 5 just so that you could sit down and force yourself to write? Or do you have any, like, I don't know, do you take Tylenol before you write?
Oh, God.
Is there anything like any superstitions or rituals you do with writing?
I'm most creative in the morning, so I try to save my mornings for that. And then the other thing is I keep a list on my phone of ideas or memories. And then when I finish a story, I go to my phone And it's like, oh God, this is garbage. It's all garbage. And then you hopefully find something in there, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it? Nothing else? Do you have like a specific space you like to write in? Do you have toys or anything?
Yeah, I do. I mean, in my office, that's where I do most of my writing. And I have a couple of like, I got a crystal that someone gave me. All right, fine. Maybe that'll help. That's like in front of on my computer. But no, I don't have, other than that, I can't do, there's no music. I can't do any of that. It's too distracting.
You're just very clinical with it. It's an 8 to 5. You just sit down.
Oh, not 8 to 5 because I don't have
8 to noon.
Maybe, yeah, because I don't have that many hours of really good work in me. It's, you get blocked and then you stop and okay, I'll come back to it tomorrow. Yeah,
whenever I've tried to write, I envision writers always being so romantic, right? Like they have a cigarette and a tumbler full of ice and whiskey type of thing, and they're just mowing down the keyboard. And I always try to I think I'm too particular and I want it to be perfect. And then I'm too focused on like trying to make the setup perfect that I don't actually write. Yeah. And it's like putting your butt in the seat just becomes such a hurdle for me.
But you know what? You don't have to show that first draft to anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, you shouldn't either. I mean, so it's like, what difference does it make if it's garbage? Just get it down.
Yeah.
And a lot of time I'll write in the car. I turn off the radio and I'll just think of one moment that I need to fix in the story. And I'll just focus on that one moment. And then if that's a half hour I spend on that moment, great. Then I get home, I'll type up a note for that. So I can it's just like one little piece at a time.
Yeah. I like that. That's when I've had my best spurts of writing. It's like when there's an inspiration, there's a clear thing I need to do. That's when I do it. But otherwise I find it to be like working out, right? Like the hardest part is getting there. Yeah. And once you're there, it's easy to write.
Are you writing scripts?
I just wrote a short film I really liked.
Oh, okay.
I have like a TV pilot.
Okay, great.
I journal every day. That's about it.
Oh, that's not nothing. Journaling is good for you.
Yeah, it's just like minutes of my day though. But it is fun for arguments. Like if I'm arguing with a friend what happened on a vacation 2 years ago, we can go to my journal as like
for sure.
Record of truth.
I wish I don't have one. And I wrote one of the stories in the book is about not having one and visiting an old college girlfriend to get stories that she might remember for the book.
Oh, that's funny.
And that's a story in the book. Yeah. Yeah.
Did she have any?
Yeah, she did, and she's
like that one time you called me for stories.
It was I went out with her in college, and I loved her in college, and then she broke up with me. Now she lives in LA, only like a mile from me.
Oh, funny.
Yeah, and so I went to her house, and she's got a life, and it was just after all these years, and so that's actually the title story. That story is called A Paper Orchestra. And it's about the day I spent with her.
That's awesome.
Day, yeah.
So she had a few good anecdotes for you.
She had. I can't ruin it.
Don't ruin it.
Tell you all of it. But I went there and I got something that I wanted. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that. Where are you from originally?
New York.
New York.
Yeah.
And did you always aspire to do creative stuff? You said you went to Princeton for sort of general stuff, but
I went to Princeton for the degree.
Because it sounded cool.
Yeah. When I was in high school, like Cheers was the big show, and I was like, how can I be a writer on Cheers?
Really? That's what it was. Yeah.
But even before that, I mean, I watched too many sitcoms growing up. Like that's all I lived on. Now they don't even have them anymore. But and then when I discovered that there were writers, like it didn't really even occur to me that there were writers.
Yeah.
But there was an article in Vanity Fair or some magazine, and it was about what it was like to be a writer on the Cosby Show. And I was like, oh my God! And it was like they make money. I was like, are you kidding me? Sign me up.
Yeah. My understanding of writers' rooms, and keep me honest, is I think I would thrive better than actually sitting down and writing. It seems like to me, writers' rooms are largely just kind of kicking the tire around, bullshitting, throwing shit against the wall, seeing what sticks. Is that your experience with most of the shows you've worked on as well? It's like a different muscle than actually sitting down and writing.
At some point, you get sent off on draft. Left. I mean, they'll say, hey, you're writing this. Now you got to go to your office for 2 weeks and write the damn thing. And that's really hard.
Right. That's the hard part.
But even, being in a writer's room can be intimidating, especially for me in the beginning. I didn't know how to do any of it. And so it was very, like I'd pitch an idea and nothing. No one would say anything. Someone else would pitch an idea with experience and we'd get a big laugh and everyone would love it, including me.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, how do they know? I know their idea is way better than mine. How did they know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what did you come to find?
That takes years of experience of just like sitting at their feet and absorbing. And but you have to do it. You kind of have to learn it fast, or else because it's not a school. You're there to participate and to contribute. So you have to contribute in little ways that you can in the beginning, and then hang on by your teeth.
Yeah, you pick your moments, sort of.
Yeah.
What was your first writer's room, and how did you come about that? You were in LA for a few years. You said like 3 years.
Well, my first full-time job was Just Shoot Me. Okay. So that was the biggest break.
Yeah.
But I wrote some stuff before that.
How did that come about?
That was my writing partner and I. We wrote a bunch of spec scripts together, and our agent got it into the hands of the assistant of Steve Levitan, who created that show.
Yep.
And she loved the script, and she gave it to him, and he hired us. It was right after the pilot.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How did you get your agent then?
And that's one of the stories in the book. It's all like all that stuff. We went through I went through a bunch of agents. You know, this one. You know, you get signed here, then nothing happens. They drop you. And
Right.
They drop you. But that agent, who was that agent? That was it wasn't even the first agent. That was probably my third, who got us into a stat. And then we signed a terrible contract. What are you going to do? Usually your first contract in Hollywood, you are going to get screwed. And that's what happened.
You can't say no, basically.
You have no leverage, and you don't know any better. But it's really, you have no leverage. You're not going to walk away.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So at that time, from all the interviews I've done with the writers, you had a partner, so you probably you split the money, right?
Yeah.
You guys had to go halvesies on it?
Yeah, for our entire career. We
really?
write together everything, except for the book, we write everything together.
Really? You're still together?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. What's the key to that long of a
It's like a
partnership?
marriage. I mean, he's very talented. We are, at this point, we kind of think alike. And when we give notes on something, we have very similar notes. So it's not like, and it's not an ego thing. If he comes up with an idea that's better than me, great.
Yeah.
It means I don't have to come up with anything.
Right.
Yeah.
What's his name?
His name is Sievert. Sievert Clarum. Yeah.
I love that. That's super cool. Why, though, at some point, and pardon me if I'm overstepping, but like when you get all these credits after some point, why don't you guys just go your separate ways and make twice as much money?
You could. In theory, though, you work more because you are two for the price of one. So it's easier to get work. But also, I think we both feel the work that we do together is really good.
Yeah.
And so I don't think either one of us has really been chasing money. It's really been about, it's about doing good work and having a creative life. And we've taken jobs where you're like, but there's not a lot of money. So it's not, it's not really about the money.
When you say 2 for 1, though, you never were working on 2 shows at the same time.
No.
You just meant you were doing half of as much time.
Well, the show's getting 2 writers for the price of 1.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. But I thought you meant you got, it was like a 2 for 1 deal. That you could split your time. Yeah.
No, you can't do that. The writing is more than full time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on Just Shoot Me, you mentioned you were talking about the writer's room and the experience of like knowing when to step in. Like, how long were you on that show, and how long do you think it was before you fully got comfortable in that sort of room? Or was it later down the line in a different room where you actually got comfortable?
I was on the first 4 seasons of Just Shoot Me, and it wasn't until the second season where I thought, hey, I'm contributing in a meaningful way here. Like, I'm getting a lot of lines in, I'm getting jokes, I'm getting big laughs. But even then, it wasn't until then we went to King of the Hill for 5 seasons, but it wasn't until we ran a show called Glenn Martin that no one saw, but we were the showrunners in that, and then you're coming into your own because then you're the boss.
Right. So what happened on that show? Why did nobody see it?
Oh, that was on the show on Nick at Night, and so it was a stop motion animation with Kevin Nealon and Catherine O'Hara and Judy Greer.
Oh, that's good.
It was a great cast. It was such a fun show, but it was dirty. Nick at Night wanted a dirty show. They wanted it was it was not quite as bad as Family Guy, but it was along the lines. It was racy, and we're like, but Nick at Night is like a half hour, like 1 minute before Nick at Night, which was I guess 8 o'clock. Like 1 minute before, they're playing baby cartoons, But then at 8 o'clock, now they want racy adult animation.
Yeah.
And like, it was like, all right, are you sure? Yeah, we're sure. Okay. So we're doing it. And then like season 1 we air, and every parent, like the parent councils just counsel us. Like, because it's the babysitting channel. Like they want to leave the room and have the kids watch TV. They don't want like dick jokes.
Yeah. So how long? That only lasted a season?
It was
basically?
2 seasons because
you got 2. Okay.
It takes 9 months to animate. So by the time they realized it was the wrong show. We had already slipped more into the under. We got more in production, so that was the genius of it.
So, is that like a growth moment for you, or do you learn something from that? Like the idea of working on successful shows like Just Shoot Me, King of the Hill for years, and then you go do your own thing, and it doesn't necessarily work.
Yeah.
How do you not internalize that and say I'm a failure?
Oh, God, not even the least. I mean, like, first of all, the show was good. We liked it.
Yeah.
All the writers, it was like a writer's show. So we had a lot of really good writers and like a lot of jokes that writers like kind of like really edgy stuff. And so it was a blast to write. But most shows get canceled. So when it got canceled, it wasn't like you're a failure. It's more like, yeah, of course it's going to get canceled. Get another job, I guess.
I love that matter-of-fact approach to it because I feel like a lot of people would take it personally.
No, everything gets canceled. I mean, when you sell a pilot script, it's dead. You know it's dead the minute you sell it, but you're going to get the money, you'll get paid because the odds of, they buy so much more than they air, so it's dead already.
You're just thinking by the numbers, it's most likely not going to come to fruition.
Yeah.
I see.
And of course, in the beginning, I was disappointed, but now when it happens, you're like, all right, yeah, okay. What, you want to buy something else? That's all I think. I'll sell you something else.
Yeah. But I like this. This seems healthy that you're not attaching yourself too much to it. But at the same time, don't you worry that maybe you won't get another one? Or did you at some point at least worry about that?
I'm always worried about it. But yeah, I mean, every time your gig might be your last gig, especially as you get older in Hollywood. But it's been a fun ride. So what are you going to do?
I love how matter of fact you are about this.
Yeah.
This is like lengthy conversations, I feel like, with friends, or just I've heard people talk about this, like dealing with that. Like, I'm going to get one, I'm not going to get it. What if I don't get another? What do I do? How do I deal with that type of thing? And you're just like, well, you might not. And that's the end of it.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a blessed, like I have had way more success than I thought. If you had told me when I was 10 that I was going to have this kind of success, fantastic. Are you kidding me? So the fact that I'm not Shonda Rhimes wealthy or, Aaron Sorkin successful, okay. It was never the goal.
Yeah. I like to think, I was watching, I forget the golf show on Netflix, but one of the golfers was like, somebody has to be the 200th ranked golfer in the world, and that just happens to be me. I'm not going to win a major, but I'm good enough to get paid to do it, and somebody has to be the 200th best.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what that kind of reminds me of.
Well, there's like the odds of being a working screenwriter in Hollywood. It's slightly, there's slightly more players and writers working in Hollywood on a successful level than there are players in the NFL. Yeah. And so it's that you're working at the top, and you're not going to stay in it forever.
Yeah. Definitely.
It's hard, but I'm totally happy. And like, as long as I get to write, like my book, I'm happy.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of writing, right? You don't have to get paid to write. You can just write whenever you want.
You can write whatever you want. I mean, it's better if you get paid.
What's the longest you've gone? Because from where I'm sitting or where other people are looking, you're very successful. You've done a lot of shows. What's the longest period you went without working? Like, have you had dark periods where it's like a year where you didn't have a job or anything?
Not a year, but it's probably right now because we had first we had the there was the pandemic, which slowed things down, then the writer's strike, and now the strike is over, but production still hasn't resumed, so that's why I was surprised that you said you had an audition. So this is probably like 6 months, It could be 6 months, could be the longest, and it may be longer.
It's got to be longer than that, right? Wasn't the strike starting in May?
Oh, so maybe it's been longer.
8 months, maybe?
Okay, yeah. But I do have a thing on the side. We're doing an animated pilot on the side, so that, I guess I am working, but it's not as much as I usually do.
Yeah. So the longest period is now.
Yeah.
So it was never more than a few months between jobs.
6 months usually.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
You haven't had any odd jobs then since Just Shoot Me.
No, I've worked exclusively as a television writer, which is a blessing. But now I'm kind of branching off into other stuff, so that's fun.
Yeah. I know you're very matter of fact, but do you reflect on that? Like you mentioned, your 10-year-old self wouldn't believe that, but what you just said is crazy. Since Just Shoot Me, you've only worked as a writer. Like that's awesome.
Yeah, and again, I'll still compare myself to other writers who've had more success than me. Yeah. And I had when I was on King of the Hill, there's a writer, John Collier, and he said something really smart to me. this is years ago. He said, because I was complaining about some writer who got a deal or whatever. And he said, there will always be someone younger than you, less talented than you, making more money than you.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a great piece of advice. So it really, stop it. Stop complaining, comparing yourself.
Yeah. Comparison is the thief of joy, as they like to say, because we don't compare backwards, right? We compare upwards. We don't compare backwards.
Oh yeah, right. Exactly.
We don't look at all the people that we're ahead of. We only look towards.
And then there are people who are more successful than me who got whose names you may have heard of, but when I hear about what's going on in their personal life, I'm like, no thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't think about the other baggage that comes along with some of that stuff.
Right.
How much of your work have you gotten versus how much your reps have gotten you? We talked about how you had many agents right away, and a lot of them didn't do anything for you, and you moved on. Last few writers I've interviewed, like Jason Palmer I just had on, who does the Fox NFL Sunday sketches and worked on like Dawson's Creek and things. He was like, no agent has ever gotten me anything.
Right.
And he was very jaded by that. And I feel like that isn't not normal for writers. So
in the beginning of my career, it was the agents got us everything. I mean, but in the past several years, no, we're getting the work. It's our hustle. So I don't want to take all the credit away from them, but certainly now it's like, what do they do? And what do they do? So. Yeah.
Yeah. But you still have a full team?
Yes. I pay everyone off anyway. Yeah.
Like a mob boss.
Yeah. I mean, and there's some, I understand it. There's, when agents are looking for clients, they're really looking for a client who's on the cusp, who's going to do 99% of the work or 90% of the work, which is why they get paid 10%. Right. They don't want to, they're not going to do all that work for you. You have to do it.
Right. So basically, if I was a writer coming up right now, you would recommend getting an agent for sure to start, because that's how open.
But you're not going to get one.
Right. That's what's tricky, right? That's the catch-22. So what would be your advice for somebody that's just starting out now? Just write a bunch of stuff and send it to agents, or just what would your thought be?
You have to look, if you want an agent to rep you, like I said, they're not really going to change your career for the most part. Not today. You want to look like a bag of money. And that means you want the agent to, you're just on the cusp. You're doing all this yourself, and all the agent has to do is make a phone call or negotiate the contract, and then they'll rep you.
Yeah.
And so it's the other way. And I think a lot of people think the agent's going to make your career, and I have to just say, no, you got to make your career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. I feel the same in a lot of ways, but it does feel like I always reference it as like gatekeepers. Acting wise, there's a number of gatekeepers that we have to get past, and it does seem like an agent is a gatekeeper that you have to navigate. Like,
yeah, I mean, acting's a little different, I suppose, but yeah.
But like writing, like even if you have a phenomenal script, how if you don't have an agent, how are you going to get that anywhere?
Well, because you can make your own contacts and have your own like cohort of people you came up with, your assistants or young producers that haven't done anything, and you become friends with them, and then suddenly they get promoted and you're still friends with them, you still in contact with them. That's kind of like your cohort. That's your class.
Yeah.
And so it's I don't like the word networking because it's kind of greasy, but it's helping people out in your. I mean, for you, for an actor, take whatever job it is. A student film, great. Because those student films at USC, those kids, they're going to go places.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So whatever, do a student film for no money and hang out with them. And then 3 years, they'll,
Yeah, that's the hope for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. The idea of sending the elevator back down, I always love that.
Yeah.
The idea that once somebody in your circle makes it, they can send it back for you.
Oh, for sure. And I work with a lot of guys. I work with... Kevin Heffernan and Steve Levy from Broken Lizard, and those guys do that. They help out their own, like they help out people a lot.
Yeah, they seem like great guys.
Yeah,
we used to watch Super Troopers all the time.
Oh yeah,
in high school.
Yeah.
But you mentioned so the agent got you stuff at the beginning, but now you guys have hustled on your own to get most of your stuff. Is that mostly through like not networking, but like just like? Do you raise your hand and email people and like, hey, I'm available, this got canceled? Or is it just more like they know your work from previous shows? How do you maintain those relationships?
A lot of it is like we worked with a producer years ago, and then we have an idea and we contact them.
Okay.
And we don't even let the agent know or something.
Yeah. So you're just constantly trying to make yourself pop up in people's minds.
Yeah.
You're just trying to be there and let them know you're around.
And what so with my book, I tour with it, right? And so I have a one-man show that I perform based on the book. And I told my my manager about it. Hey, this is what I'm doing. He said, oh, good for you. It wasn't like, hey, how can I help? I said, oh, that sounds fun.
That does sound fun. What's the one-man show?
It's basically it's a performance of some of the stories in the book. And so it's and that's something David Sedaris does, although I do it a little differently. But and then you get to tour with it, and and afterwards you sign books, and it's fun, but it's also a way of it's a new creative muscle for me.
Have you performed much though at all?
Yeah.
What's your performance background? Have you acted on any of the shows you've written on?
I've done some voice acting, but I've never.
I'm shocked you haven't been like just a random perp on Tacoma FD or something like that.
Yeah, my partner was. No, I don't even have the acting bug.
Okay.
But the performance part of it was, I don't know. It's something that appealed to me. It's like, how do I take this book to the next level and get it out there more and these, so I perform at small theaters, and I'll do a couple more shows, and probably Atwater Village soon, and then Boston, and then hopefully Chicago and New York.
But I love the idea that performance isn't a thing for you, and then you do probably the hardest thing, which is like a one-man performance.
Yeah. But those are my words. I'm not sure if I want to act someone else's words.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it's still daunting.
Is it?
I think a one-man show's daunting, even if you wrote it.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't even that doesn't faze me. If I had to do your words, I'd be like, I'm screwing it up. But I'm not going to screw up my words.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm impressed by that because
okay.
I feel like a lot of writers I've interviewed are just like they don't want to be in front of the camera, and they're not performers, and just to be like, no, I can perform this. How long is your performance? I guess is it more than half an hour?
No, it's about an hour 15, and then sometimes we do a talk back afterwards where we talk about because people like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm impressed. I'll try to come to the Atwater.
Come to the show. Yeah.
That's my neighborhood. How involved are you in the casting process when you guys are writing episodes? I'm just curious. I was thinking about this last night when I got that audition. I was like, because on our Actors Access they say like the writer and everything. And I'm like, okay. Do you watch tapes ever? Have you watched tapes? When do you? When don't you?
Yeah. I mean, it just depends on how the shows run. So like on Just Shoot Me, for example, I was very involved because it was my episode. And on the episodes we wrote, we would sit in all the auditions. But if it wasn't our episode, we wouldn't. But on shows that you run, it's not uncommon for the showrunner to cast everything. On Marin, when we ran Marin, we were casting while we were on set, so we would watch tape on a laptop. It was just the three of us, Mark and my partner Sievert and me. We huddled around and go, oh, that's the one, give it to her.
Really?
At lunch. Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Sorry. So you wouldn't watch them all. You would just see the one you like and then be like, that's the one.
Well, you would watch. So at this point, right? So the casting director has weeded out.
Usually sends you like 15, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't have that much time, and you got to understand. Like if we're not casting at lunchtime, we're casting at the end of work. I'm exhausted. I've been on set all day.
Yeah.
It's a long 13-hour day, and now I got to do more work. I want to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And so you're looking at tape, and you can tell within, if it's a 3-minute audition, you can pretty much tell in the first 30 seconds if the person's even close. And then you'll skip, okay, nope. And then you like, don't save anything if you're auditioning. Put it all up, get it up there right from the get-go. And then you'll find someone, usually if there's like 15 people are auditioning, there might be 3 that are good for the part.
Yeah.
And you'll skip to find them. And then of the 3, only one's going to get it, and the other 2 are going to be crushed. And they're going to want to know, why didn't I get it? And it's, well, because only one can. That's why. And we chose the other one. I mean, it could have been you, though.
I love this honesty.
Yeah.
Wait, sorry. Were you the showrunner on Marin?
My partner and I were. Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I loved Marin.
Yeah, it's a good show.
I thought that show was phenomenal.
Thank you.
It spoke to his voice so perfectly.
Yeah.
You guys did great on that. I didn't realize you were showrunner.
Well, Mark inspired me to write this book.
Oh, that's
Writing
awesome.
on that show helped me write this book.
Because it's so personal to Mark?
Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool.
And Mark was very brave about everything. We'd be in the writer's room and he'd say something and we'd be like, you sure you want to do this? Yeah. Cool.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's very cool. But to the casting, so because you were the showrunner, your experience, the showrunner usually is watching it.
The showrunner almost always watches it. On some shows I've been on, no.
Not necessarily the writer of the episode.
Yeah, exactly. It depends. Like if it's a staff writer, a new staff writer, they may not get that kind of power.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because they may not know.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you? So, I love and hate that you kind of throw away these auditions. Like,
yeah.
But I love that you're honest with me because I've interviewed so many casting directors and they're like, we watch everything front to back. We go through all 5,000 submissions. We send 15 very thoughtful auditions to producers. And then
because you're talking about, okay, it's now 11 o'clock at night. I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
And now I got to watch another half hour of auditions or an hour, like whatever it is. Like, no, you can tell if someone's going to hit it or not. And someone will. And that's the one you're going to hire.
So let me ask you about this for like co-stars, which is mostly what I audition for because now I'm fascinated. Mm-hmm. I'm really interested in this honesty. Like, if it's like 2-line audition, are you watching the whole thing of like a 2-line audition?
Yeah, that's nothing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, but you still know almost right away the moment the first words come out.
If it's comedy.
If it's them or not?
Usually if it's comedy. Because comedy not everyone can do. It's a very different thing. And I can. I feel like I can.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just an instinct to it, right?
Yeah. And sometimes they just, they come in with the right energy. I mean... And like, we give the clues in the script, obviously, or if it's well written, you do. And sometimes I'm curious. I'm like, how did you there's so many clues there. How did you not understand that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what clues? Speak on that. Can you?
So when you're a guest star or a co-star, it's not about you. It's not the job is not for you. You're an obstacle getting in the way of the regular character, And so it's their story. You're just a device sometimes just to get in their way. So if they are in a hurry and your job is to, serve lattes at the cafe, if they're in a hurry, then you should be slow.
Yeah. You're
getting in their way.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. So it's basically know the context of the scene.
Yeah.
But what if like I had one last night, I got one page specifically.
Right, and that's hard, yeah. Okay. Right, I understand. It'd be easier if you had the whole script, a lot easier, but you don't. I don't know why they don't do that. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the challenges us actors go through because those co-stars, like, we want to throw them away and we want to just sort of not overthink it because it is servicing the leads, but at the same time, like, it's an opportunity and we really want to go all out on it.
And you should. I mean, listen, when I was cast in a King of the Hill episode. I had a huge part, and then suddenly I'm overthinking everything, because you want to do well, but yeah,
and like for me, like there's the co-star I did last night was sort of like it was a fight potentially, right? And I could play it very aggressive, but I knew the tone of the show, and it's like comedy, so I'm like, I'm not taking these guys seriously. But there's just so many different ways you can read 4 different
or there's so many choices that you can play. And then you don't know which one to choose, and as if I'm watching it, I'll go, "Oh, that's the one."
Yeah.
But there are some actors who will make everything right. So I just remember one instance I was directing Alice and Janie on that animated show we're talking about, and I gave her no. She did it one way, and I go, try, give me another one where you're angry or whatever. And then that was perfect. I go, give me another one where you're just a little tired but angry. And that was perfect. I was like, holy crap, everything you do is perfect.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But it's so different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's tricky too when you can only send 1 or maybe 2 takes of something too, and you're like, oh, but these are all so good. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Right.
It's a mess.
I mean, it's hard. I mean, acting is hard. People think it's easy, but it's not. It's hard.
Yeah, I like and now you're kind of confirming my suspicion, like getting past that agent, getting past casting director, getting to producers, it's like the lottery. Like sometimes your ball just pops up, and assuming I'm doing everything right, when it gets to you, it's just sort of maybe my ball pops up, maybe not. There's not a lot I can...
Sometimes, sometimes you... Right. And I do feel bad. I remember, it doesn't happen anymore, but when I was on Just Shoot Me, I'd go to my office, and then, all the actors were waiting outside in the hallway. And you'd walk right past them, and they all have a big smile on their... And, I was like, oh, God, it just seems so hard. You all want it. You all drove across town. You all worked on it last night, but only one of you can get the part.
Yeah. It's brutal.
Yeah.
Luckily, the audition I had last night was multiple construction workers, so three of us get the part.
Yeah, right.
Come on.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife was an actor when I met her, so I do know how difficult it is.
Yeah, it's brutal. You mentioned earlier the strike and COVID. How do you, when something like that happens, how do you sort of recenter or like get past that momentum stopper? Like if you're in a room and suddenly it's done and then you got certain months off, like do you keep writing during the day?
Yeah.
Do you step away and do hobbies?
Oh no! I mean, that's another thing with a partner. We hold each other accountable, and we get together and we try to come up with ideas and shop them, and so there's always something to work on, but you're not getting paid.
Yeah. So it's just coming up with short film ideas or scripts.
Not short films. It's all usually pilots.
Pilots.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you guys like connect every morning? Do you do a meeting or do you just have like a Word doc that you're just sharing ideas?
He lives close, so I go to his house usually.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's convenient. Do you have any hobbies or anything you do to step away from the business when you're not trying to beat your head against the wall of figuring out what works?
I mean, sadly, my hobby is writing. So my job is writing and my hobby is writing.
Oh.
But again, it doesn't feel like work when I'm doing
your voice.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like work to me.
Yeah. So you don't it's like, what's like a fun night for Michael Jamin?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I have kids, they're grown now, but so a lot of it was about doing whatever, to entertain them. But now, now my hobby, I guess, is really just getting this on the performing, and we're getting that up and running, and yeah.
And TikTok, I guess.
Well, TikTok is the medium TikTok is what allows me to do all this. Yeah. So yeah.
Do all the work with the writing, you mean?
Yeah, because that's my audience, so they're the people buying the book.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Have you ever dealt with rewrites? Like, I assume you have. Have you rewrote somebody else? You and your partner rewrote somebody else's, or have you been rewritten?
All the time.
And how does that process go? Is it stressful to rewrite somebody else, or is that? I assume because given everything you've said up to this point, it's going to get rewrite. That's par for the course.
Yeah.
It is what it is, type of thing.
The first thing we sold was an episode of Lois and Clark.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Great show.
Oh yeah, and so
I love Dean Cain.
that show, we sold this idea. The showrunners loved it, and they rewrote the hell out of us. And disappointing, but it was more disappointing. Like, oh damn, we didn't give you what you wanted. We wanted to, and I was grateful for them. You just feel like you let them down. And now, if I have to rewrite somebody, it's not because I want to. It's not because I want to stay up late and rewrite it for free, which is what it is. I don't get paid extra. It's because they didn't quite do it right.
Yeah.
And so it's that. It's really not about. At least for me, it's not ego. And if someone, so when I turn in a script and they're not happy, it's like, oh, okay, I missed the mark a little bit. I'll try not to next time.
Yeah, that's fair. Do you guys have aspirations to do film or no?
We've sold a couple of movies, but they didn't get made. Film is torture to me. If you have seen TV, the writer has control, and film, the director has control. So I didn't particularly enjoy the writing process of the films.
Yeah. Why? Just because of how long they were, and you knew you weren't going to have much control of this after you sold it, type of thing.
And we sold it to 20th Century Fox. It wasn't like they're no one, right? But there's so much free rewriting that you have to do. It's kind of like it's just a form of hell.
Yeah.
And so I didn't enjoy it. I prefer TV.
Have you guys ever had an overall deal with somebody?
We had a deal at CBS Studios that was it was a 2-year deal, but it got broken after year 1 because the writer's strike in 2008.
Oh, funny.
Yeah.
It just completely goes away.
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
So we lost a lot of money on that.
That's frustrating.
Yeah. 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 It's just
It
life.
doesn't seem like. I love how matter of fact you are.
I don't even think about it. We lost a lot of money, and I don't even think about it. It's like that wasn't mine.
It seems frustrating that can be a thing, though. It reminds me of I had a buddy get drafted on the last day of the MLB draft.
Uh-huh.
He got a 7-year minor league contract, and then they cut him after 1 year, and they didn't pay him the rest of it. It's like, why even make it a 7-year contract? Because they have no leverage. It goes back to what you said about just shoot me.
Right.
But it's just like, why? Yeah. It's really frustrating. I don't like that.
Well, yeah. I don't even think about it, really.
I love that.
Yeah.
Do you go to therapy?
I've been, not currently. It's not really true. I do now. I go once a month, but it doesn't feel like it. Yeah.
It seems like I always say you got to handle this business just level, right? Level-headed. Like if you tie your happiness to the highs and lows, those lows are gonna get really low, and it's gonna be turbulent times.
Yeah.
You just through this entire conversation, you've just felt entirely level about the good and the bad, and that's a really healthy way to approach it, I think.
Like there's stuff I really like the book I really like. That gives me joy right now, writing that. So
it's a great book.
Yeah,
so far from what I've read.
So far, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last question I like to ask Michael is, who took a chance on you?
Many people. So recently, I suppose the most recent would be anybody who hires me is taking a chance.
Yeah.
But when we were doing Marin, Mark, he's like, "Hey, why don't you direct an episode?" That was a chance. I'd never directed live action before.
Yeah.
So, and Mark is famous for, I don't know if he's famous for that, but he does do that. He gave a lot of people on that show their first chances. He was very gracious that way.
That's very cool.
But the first chance was Lois and Clark. They were my bosses. I was their assistant, Brad Buckner and Eugenie Ross Lemming, and actually wrote a story about her, but that won't be until the next book. But they took a chance on me for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's important to have. It goes back to sending the elevator back down.
Yeah.
You need somebody to take a chance on you, otherwise you're never gonna make it.
And I know I've done the same for young writers, and sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
You mentioned a second book. There is a second book coming?
Well, I'm writing it, yeah.
Is it a follow-up, more personal essays?
Yeah, more of the same.
That's great.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about, Michael, before we close this off?
That's it. I thank you for having me. This was a nice chat.
It was great. It was a pleasure meeting you. I like putting a face to the actual face I see on TikTok. And I told you this. You're taller than I expected.
Because I'm on a phone. I mean, you're not 3 inches tall? Nope.
You got a tail slate to end it.
Yeah. Extra tail slate. Michael Jamin.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
MTV and the Channel E. A thing for celebrity.
Everyone wants to know what's in my wallet.